Yeah.
We can see what's going on.
Thank you.
How are you?
That's giddy up. Alright, as soon as I get on screen, we are. Let's bring the Thursday, November 18th, Webster Town Board meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright. Dolly, can you do roll call, please?
Supervisor Flaherty.
Here.
Councilwoman Colby. Present. Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilman Cahill.
Here.
Councilman Dean.
Here.
County Attorney Genesi.
Okay. Now, before we get down to the next item on the agenda, which is open to the floor, where each speaker will be allowed up to 5 minutes to discuss and present anything they want. I've said for 2 years almost since I became supervisor, I just would love if we had more attendance at our town board meetings. Well, I've gotten my wish, haven't I done it? This is great to see. This is great to see. So, I think because Karen is much more organized than me and was proactive, she got, Karen Buck that is, she got a list of people that are intending to speak tonight at the open to the floor. And Charles Schreiber, you are up first.
Good evening, Supervisor Flaherty, members of the town board. I'm Fire Commissioner Charles Schreiber from the West Webster Fire District, SCHREIBER, and we are at 1051 Gravel Road, Webster, New York, 14580. I have a letter for the board from the fire district. It'll take about 3 or 4 minutes to read, after which I will yield the remaining time back to the board. Dear Supervisor Flaherty and members of the town board, for over 80 years, the West Webster Fire District has proudly provided ambulance service to the residents of the district. Our operating model of a fire department-based ambulance provides significant benefit to the district, our firefighters, and most importantly, our community. By integrating fire and ambulance services, we are able to share resources, manpower, facilities, and coordinate call responses in a way otherwise not possible. 18 months ago, the fire district started a review of our ambulance service to ensure our community was receiving the best possible care in the most cost-efficient manner. This was necessary due to rising call volumes, decreasing volunteer availability, and the desire of the town of Webster to eliminate financial subsidy of EMS in West Webster. Our review process included consultation with fire, EMS, and public safety officials from across the town, county, and state, and required the district to invest hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars. Using the information collected, it was determined that a change was needed to bring our ambulance service into line with industry standards, and the best way to accomplish that was to contract with an outside vendor. In New York State, ambulance transportation is a professional service, and a request for proposal process is not mandated to select a vendor. However, the fire district felt an RFP process was absolutely necessary to ensure that our new system was developed without bias and created the best service in the county. Our community deserves absolutely nothing less. 9 criteria were developed to evaluate each vendor's proposal and determine who could provide the best service on day 1. Examples of criteria used include corporate strength, performance metrics, safety record, and the number of ambulances provided. After a rigorous evaluation process, and with the assistance of the county EMS director, the Penfield Volunteer Emergency Ambulance was found to have a superior proposal and be the superior agency. As such, a contract was signed with Penfield to provide ambulance service to the district effective January 1st, 2022. Our new contract creates an alliance critical to both the operations of the fire district and EMS in a way no other company offered or is capable. Highlights of the contract include integration with the fire department by placing 2 ambulances at West Webster Fire Station 1 for prompt response, ALS staffed ambulances with paramedics from the same agency to simplify billing, strict quality measures submitted to the district for monthly review, integrated training with our firefighters, and the commitment not to seek subsidy from the town of Webster. The corporate strength and operating model of Penfield Ambulance will benefit the whole town of Webster by not needing a single cent of taxpayer money from Webster citizens to operate in town. While other town governments collect fees and taxes for ambulance service, Penfield Ambulance will not require such a subsidy. Developing a new EMS delivery system takes years of planning and development to be successful. The district is aware the town is reviewing our decision to contract with Penfield. In our meetings with Supervisor Flaherty over the past year, the district offered several recommendations, including the formation of an advisory council of fire, police, EMS, and citizens to make recommendations about service, or the commission of an independent consultant to study EMS and make recommendations on a townwide basis. With the absence of either option now, the district favors allowing each entity to complete their current contracts, which expire in 2025, and then collaborate at that time to determine which company and which model is working best. With 43 days left until January 1st, preparations are well underway at many agencies for implementation of our new system. Any changes to that service would be detrimental to the fire district, our volunteer firefighters, and most importantly, our community. Tonight, I am here to ask for the support of the town board. The fire district and the town of Webster have always had a positive relationship, and we seek the same in the future. Our community, our firefighters, and our patients deserve absolutely nothing less. Thank you for your time. May God bless you, may God bless our firefighters, and may God bless America.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, and next up is Ned Stanler.
Not as tall as he. Thank you very much for allowing me to be able to speak tonight. I am not a person that lectures a lot, so I will make this very simple. I'm going to speak to the board and as a business process. You have 2 viable, sustainable ambulance corps that are sitting in the West Webster Fire District. You have Penfield that provides service as well as Webster EMS. My feeling is that since they are both sustainable and they both have the capability of taking care of both of their towns, that each one should have the capability of doing just that. Not sure if the fire district should be mandating who's going to take over a whole fire district ambulance service. I think that if there's an issue down the road, that whether or not Penfield or Webster has issues, and they're then taken over by somebody else, that always could happen. However, at this point in time, you do have 2 viable agencies that can handle their own territories, we'll say, their own geographic footprint, in the West Webster Fire District. And I really do feel that that's how this should be maintained. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ned.
Did we get Ned's address?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Did you need that? Yes.
We do.
Sure,
Sorry.
it's 70 Corral Drive in Penfield. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned.
Dan, did you cross off? That was just.
I thought it was a guest.
Okay. So you are, I guess. Okay, that was everybody that's signed in, but is there anybody else that would like to speak who didn't have a chance to sign in? Okay, well, thank you very much. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. Don, you caught right back up. Yeah, you know what, I mean, one time in the last year and a half, did you not be right on the spot? And that was like a war and peace minute, so. I looked at the minutes from the November 4th board meeting, and I make a motion that we approve them.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye. Now, I don't know who looked at the bills this week, because I was in the same room doing some Zoom meetings, and we had Barry kind of clue in on some of those while he was doing the bills.
Yes, I did review the bills, I found them all in order, and I recommend that we pay them as submitted.
Second.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi? Aye.
And I reviewed the prepaid warrants as submitted by the Director of Finance, and I make a motion that we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi? Aye.
I think the next two is a combination of Pat Stevens, our Highway Superintendent, and Paul Adams, our Finance Director, correct?
That's correct, Tom.
I'll hand it to you guys.
Yeah, the next resolution is to transfer up to $350,000 from the general fund to two capital projects. About 2 years ago, the town received a grant from Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. The grant was about $489,000 to basically build a retention pond off Gravel Road on Finn property, and also to do a small amount of work at Webster High School to restore the stream over that way. And the project included a contribution from the town, but it looks like based on current cost estimates, that's going to be more than what we originally estimated. We think the total cost of the project is going to be around $803,000, which currently leaves us about $315,000 short. So the resolution is to transfer up to $350,000 if we need it to complete the project. And then there's a subsequent resolution after that to transfer $150,000 from the general fund to capital project to basically fund, provide funding for a real return to that. I don't know if Matt has anything to add to that.
No, that covers it. I think you guys are probably familiar with the project. If you're not, the water body this affects is Shipbuilders Creek. That runs through there that has sediment loading issues. So this project is a joint collaboration between the town and Monroe County to improve that water quality. This facility will retain large amounts of water during high flow events, during heavy storm events, treat it, reduce the sediment load going downstream toward the lake. So it really is a fantastic project to have in town. Some of the original budgeting was done back in 15 and 16, and that's some of the adjustments. Some of the constructability aspects of it were probably a little different than originally budgeted due to bedrock and different excavation obstacles that we've had. But we're able to utilize the staff at the Highway Department to do the vast majority of this work. And a lot of those funds are for their time and the equipment we use to do it. But overall, it being an $800,000 or so piece of infrastructure that's coming to the town for the $350,000 is still a really good situation, I think, for the town to improve the water quality here and continue to try to do that across the town. So,
How close are you to completion?
that'll be completed next year. Got two key elements, the stream bank restoration at Thomas High School and the installation of a culvert in Shipbuilders that acts as a diversion structure to enter water into the ponds now that they're constructed and stabilized. Will be the only two elements next year. So by the end of construction season next fall.
And Barry, I know you probably of all the board members have the most knowledge of the history of this project. I know, and I'm kind of late to the dance, I got here less than 2 years ago, this started, whenever it started. Joe Herbst was in here describing to us at a board meeting back in 2020 some of the problems they had run into on this project. And when I met with Pat, and I'm trying to think, we went through this a week or two ago. What I do remember you kind of summed up was that the original plan was that the town, because of the grants and all that, was going to end up with this several $100,000 or $800,000 structure and facility, and it was only going to cost the town $150,000 or something. Well, that's not going to be the case. It's going to end up being an $800,000 facility that costs the town $350,000 to $400,000. Is that essentially?
It is. The only thing to remember about that is the original estimate when the grant was achieved, they did not anticipate it being 800,000, right? So the
Yeah.
obstacles that came up have driven that total price up. The original objective and the reason the contribution was so low, it was a percentage of the
Yeah.
original budget, and the original budget was significantly lower.
Right.
Like $600,000 range was the original budget, and our contribution was a percentage of that. Now that the budget has gotten higher because of the obstacles you mentioned that Joe came up against, and us still this season came up against, it drove the overall price higher, which drove the town's contribution to be a higher dollar amount at the same time.
Well, and this certainly isn't something that we're just finding out about tonight. We've had numerous conversations about this. We've anticipated it coming. Just so that people know we have been discussing it.
Yep, and the other aspect of this is coming through and doing it now at these dollar values. I'm pretty confident that these are going to hold. The variable portion of the project was completed this season. That's mostly the removal of bedrock, which is very difficult to predict and quantify within the lower part of the ponds. That's over. The rest of the stuff has far less risk of any other unknowns coming up as we move forward.
And Pat, I don't want to, I mean, certainly the next question I had, you don't know, you don't know. I mean, it's, you're kind of picking up the baton on this thing. Is there any lessons as a town organization we can learn from this from a standpoint of, or is this just an anomaly that, if something like this, you know, I know we're doing boring holes into other projects and trying to figure out either sonar or holes if we're going to run into any subterranean problems that would add to the cost. I'm assuming that was not done when this was bid or proposed.
Correct. The records I inherited, and given the overall depth of these, I did not see any evidence that there was a great deal of pre-construction investigation done. Now, granted, that does cost dollars up front that wouldn't have been covered by a grant, so it's not always easy to justify spending thousands of dollars up front in order to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
But in this situation, we do learn that sometimes those are dollars very well spent.
Yeah. And Barry and Bill, anything to add to that? I mean, it just, he's right. I mean, it's kind of one of those, you know, hindsight's easy.
Yeah, it always is,
Isn't it though?
it's always easy for hindsight.
Yeah.
You don't know what's under the ground, it's hard to determine.
Yeah.
Especially at that depth.
Yeah.
Well, John, Betty, Bill, Barry, I mean, we're all thrilled to pass this resolution,
Make
right?
the resolution.
Yeah, sarcasm coming out of that, huh? Make a motion to authorize the transfer up to $350,000 from the general fund to finance the completion of the capital projects H0211, Finn Property Storm Water Retention Pond, and H0212 Webster Thomas High School Stream Restoration.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Conrad? Aye.
And then attached to that, resolution to approve budget amendment to transfer $150,000 from the general townwide funds to capital project 80211, Finn Property Storm Water Retention Pond.
Second. Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Conrad? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
That beam, does that beam block Brayton Connor? Is Brayton here tonight? Well, then I guess, Paul, this is kind
it in your bailiwick? I know
Sure, Tom. Typically, the permanent part-time workers at the town receive the same COLA increase each year that the white-collar union contract workers have. So for 2022 is 2%, the prime union contract, so just a resolution to grant that same increase to the permanent part-time staff.
Any questions?
Nope.
Straightforward. Yep. Make a motion to approve a 2% cost of living adjustment, COLA wage increase for permanent part-time employees effective January 1st, 2022.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Adam?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Taylor?
Aye. Kind of after the fact, but Paula, I think, already in the 2022 adopted budget.
Correct.
Yeah, just, I don't think that's a number for a ton, right, Charlie? We just wanted to taper it up, but yeah. My Latin teacher over here. I feel like I'm back to Catholic school now, with you, Charlie. All right. Next up, Art, I take it this is for you, right? And is this why we have a big crowd tonight in the news station about Linda Lane? Is this Linda Lane residents tonight? Okay,
I
well,
hope they're not here for me because I'll be sorely disappointed. It's a resolution to award Costage Engineering, the engineering fees for phase 1 of the Linda Lane sanitary sewer project in the amount of $3,000. Residents of Linda Lane had approached the town to install sanitary sewers in their area. We had sent out 8 RFPs to different engineering firms. We received 2 back. This would be on phase 1, which is initial engineering and cost estimates, and then if the residents so decide, we would go to phase 2, which is final engineering, construction, and so forth. Mary Harrington and I reviewed both RFPs, one from Costage Engineering and one from Hasbro. We both agreed that Costage was a complete submittal. And phase 1 from Costage was $3,000 versus Hasbro, which was $7,500. Phase 2 from Costage is $19,500 versus Hasbro at $37,500. Again, cost notwithstanding, we both agree that Costage, their submittal covers everything that we need for this project.
any questions?
Nope.
All right. I make a motion to award Costage Engineering, the engineering portion for phase 1 of the Linda Lane sanitary sewer project in the amount of $3,000.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capaldi?
Aye.
Councilman Taylor?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Adam?
Aye.
All righty. Has the board been able to review the fee schedules before we adopt our 2022 fee schedule? I just want to make sure that, based on what's been presented by the various departments, I think it was a good work.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I mean, the good news, it's November 18th, and we're 42 or 43 days before January 1st, so we're adopting the fee schedule before 2022. The bad news is that, Paul and I have discussed that in the future, we'd like to have a policy, procedure, best practice, whatever you want to call it, where when the town board adopts the next year's budget, which we did the 2022 town budget on November 4th, we're going to try to make sure that we do the fee schedule, which is revenue to the town, at that same adoption date. It just makes sense. And it's just kind of one of those things that maybe has not occurred in the past. These things happen. So we're trying to right-size that. We didn't quite hit November 4th.
It came close.
We came close. that's my monologue, Bill, I don't want to keep this here, believe it or not. Any questions by the board, comments? Okay. Please tick and tie to our 2022 budget. If anything, based on these fees, our budget probably is budgeted low on revenue. And I don't mind low revenue budgets.
Conservative.
That's conservative. So I make a motion to adopt the 2022 Town Department fee schedule and the Webster Parks and Recreation Center lodge and field rates.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Conrad.
Aye.
Okay. In all seriousness, I think the reason why we have a pretty full room tonight is lucky number 7 resolution that is on the agenda. And Bill, once again, I will try not to make this a long monologue, but I think it's only appropriate that I mention a few things before I make a motion on this resolution, which I'm going to read the whole resolution because I think the words in this resolution are very important for everybody that has interest in this topic to listen to. But I want to say that I thank Charlie and I thank Ned for getting up and speaking earlier to this. There's been a slang term I heard thrown around the last year that the supervisor doesn't know how to spell EMS. To be honest with you, that was somewhat true back a year ago. I've tried to immerse myself with the help of Councilman Cahill, and I can't thank him enough, Chad. Sometimes I thought you and I were going to come to blows on some of these things, but it worked out pretty well.
Healthy debate is always good.
It is a good thing. And as we met with West Webster Fire District leadership, including Charlie Schreiber, it always was something that I was trying to figure out exactly what the town of Webster had with their certificate of need. Certificate of need, something that over a period of about 6 years, 5 years, let's not split hairs, from 14 to 20, the town attempted to get, had to go through some appeals, correct, Charlie? And on January 15, 2020, a healthy 15 days into me being supervisor, so I knew everything, right? 15 days in, Barry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Charlie and Ahmed and Mustafa come back from Albany and say, break out the champagne. We have an official certificate of need. I didn't really know what that meant. What did it mean? Well, over the months, and I appreciate Charlie Schreiber said they started the process 18 months ago, which would have been March or April. The first time I became aware that the West Webster Fire District was considering exiting the EMS business, emergency medical services, was around March or April of this year. And that's when John Cahill and myself started meeting with West Webster leadership on this. I may not be the brightest guy in the world, but one thing that I always have really, it's always worked for me, is tell the truth and work hard. You know, let's go to the former, tell the truth. And I really wanted to make sure I told the truth and wasn't disingenuous with anybody in this process. So I let West Webster Fire District leadership know early on in those meetings, as they asked me, and I'm going to quote, they asked the town to sign an intermunicipal agreement, an IMA, and thus guarantee that we would never, and I'll use the slang term, trump their certificate of need if they decided to get out of the EMS business and award it, transfer it to a private EMS agency. And I said, and I'll stand by it, I can't sign that IMA and I can't make that promise. Because that would be a dereliction of duty for the town board and the supervisor to let any agency, trusted or not trusted, and I have no reason not to trust the West Webster Fire Department, Fire District leadership. But when half the citizens in Webster, west of Hard Road, will be affected by their decision, then the town board and the supervisor cannot just delegate that off to another agency. I would not delegate that off or advocate to this town board to delegate off a decision of the Webster School District that affects our citizens if we can have an effectuation of that. So those meetings, they were cordial, and I will say I like Charlie Schreiber. I like Chief Casper. I like Julie. Our kids play hockey together. But what was coming out of those meetings was a consistency that they wanted one thing: do not trump us. And I kept saying the same thing. I can't make that promise. Now, John and I were saying what we'd like to do is get out of what I call tribalism. And we have a unique opportunity here to come together and create the best EMS structure for the community on January 1st, 2022, and not only on that day, but for 20 years, if we work together. Well, I don't think West Webster got what they wanted out of those meetings, which was my IMA signing and guarantee, and I didn't get what I wanted out of those meetings, which was working together. And depending on who you talk to, blame, whatever. So, as I learned how to spell EMS, a couple of things came out of this. I obviously was getting to know WEMS and NEQUALS because they service East Webster, east of Hard Road, and they have for several years now. Now that's funny because that's the Northeast Joint Fire District. And the Northeast Joint Fire District encapsulates part of Webster, east of Hard Road, but also part of Penfield, correct? And somehow, you've been able to harmoniously, at WEMS and NEQUALS, have that district split as a fire district, with WEMS and NEQUALS being #1 in the 911 queue card for Webster, and my new friends, hopefully, Dan and Glenn, from Penfield Volunteer Ambulance, being #1 in the queue card in the Northeast Joint Fire District for the town of Penfield. Is that correct? Okay. Now, Mr. Commissioner Schreiber said that, you know, the West Webster Fire District, which encompasses, you're going to love this, half of Webster, west of Hard Road, and wouldn't you know it, some of Penfield too. We already have a template that it works, splitting a fire district by having Penfield Ambulance. Isn't that funny? Penfield Volunteer Ambulance covers the town of Penfield, and Webster Emergency Medical Services, Webster Ambulance, covers Webster. Well, that's interesting. So, I don't know. Now I've learned how to spell EM. I'm not quite to EMS. So, I talked to Tony LaFountain, who is the supervisor of Penfield, and I think a very respected supervisor, and has been in the EMS business, or knows about it for years because he dealt with it at Kodak. I think he's a respected person as far as knowledge of EMS. Dan, I don't want to put you and Glenn on the spot, but would you say that that's true?
Sure.
Tony has been a great mentor to me, and Tony and I had 3 different meetings on this subject. I talked to Tony today because I do not want to do something that Tony's going to see on video later from Channel 8 or from Les or from whoever else and call me tomorrow and say, why did you reference me and say that? So I told him what I wanted to say, and he said, you got my blessing. And what I had said I wanted to say was, Tony, you have told me that you are completely fine and it completely makes sense that Webster ambulance covers the geographical town of Webster as the #1 in the 911 Q card, and that Penfield Volunteer Ambulance covers all of the town of Penfield as #1 in the 911 Q card. And because Penfield Volunteer Ambulance has a base on Jackson Road in East Penfield, and WEMS now has a new base on Jackson Road in East Webster, that they almost become, or have been, a pseudo #2 on the 911 Q card for the other town if they already have an ambulance out. Is that theoretically correct? Look at the bobbing heads of the guys from the ambulance center. So, remember I said that setting up for the community, something bigger than us, getting out of the tribalism and all that? West Webster Fire, God bless them, has a beautiful building on gravel. And I appreciate and respect them getting out of the EMS business. I'm not telling them how to do their business. That's a decision that they made, God bless them. And I'm sure they sit there and say, well, you know, we built this thing when we were in the EMS business, we got 3 ambulance bays. So they're going to have a Penfield ambulance in one of those bays. Boy, that's going to be nice, isn't it, Dan and Glenn, to have an ambulance in one of those bays, or 2? Because how close you'll be to those calls in West Penfield. I hope when all the dust settles on this, that the West Webster Fire District, as things settle and move into January, for the good of the communities of Webster and Penfield, would see the validity of maybe opening their minds to taking advantage of these 3 bays they have and having a WEMS NEQALS ambulance stage there too, to create essentially the same pseudo #2 in the 911 card, Penfield to Webster, Webster to Penfield. Tony LaFountain and I said, this is really great for the citizens and the community of Webster. And that's what we're here for. We're here for the citizens and the community of Webster. I caretake the supervisor's position. It isn't me. And there'll be somebody here in 10 years. Charlie Schreiber is a commissioner. He caretakes that position. It's not about West Webster Fire District. It's not about the town of Webster government. It's about the citizens. So, Tony LaFountain said it was fine. Tony LaFountain also said this to me today. And I'm almost done.
I'm not saying to hurry.
All right? I'm almost done.
Settle down.
Where, Daniel, can you imagine if I had my mask on?
You're doing great.
Holy cow.
No, it's not. We're gonna take it from you, though.
All right. So, there's been a lot of things on the news lately and in these meetings about how West Webster doing this will cause no subsidy, no additional subsidy to the ambulance service because of them getting out of the business. But I want to make sure everybody understands something. In the town of Penfield's budget, Tony LaFountain and the town board's town budget in 2021, this year, there is $75,000 that is allocated out to EMS agencies. And in the town of Webster's budget for 2021, there is $50,000 allocated out. The town of Penfield awards, if you want to call it that, $50,000 this year to Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. Is that correct, Glenn and Dan? And because of NEQALS and WEMS and certain things with the West Webster District that touches Penfield now, does WEMS NEQALS get $25,000 from Penfield? Thank you, Emma. Now the town of Webster's budget of $50,000 this year all goes to NEQALS, WEMS. I'm sorry, Glenn and Dan. In 2022, Tony LaFountain confirmed to me today there is $75,000 in Penfield town budget allocated toward EMS. Paul, we just adopted our Webster budget. How much is allocated toward EMS?
50,000.
Now, if we move to having Webster Emergency Medical Services cover all of the town of Webster, And if Penfield, which I assume in that move would automatically be covering the whole town of Penfield, does anybody think that the town of Penfield is going to give any of that $75,000 to WEMS or Nequals? Or will it all go to Penfield Volunteer Ambulance? And Dan and Glenn, I'm not sitting here trying to disparage or whatever. You should get it. God bless you. You're handling the whole district. But I think people need to understand, if we're being told that this is going to reduce subsidy and whatever, it's not. The two towns in aggregate have $125,000 out of their budget for their EMS agencies. Today, while West Webster is still in the EMS business, and the two town budgets for next year, when they're not in the EMS business anymore, is still an aggregate of 125. It'll just shift the monies. So I think that's critical to understand. The last thing I'm going to say is that when I did figure out what Webster, the town, had with their CON, was when Dr. Jeremy Cushman, not Kushner, Dr. Jeremy Cushman, right? Geez, I hope he doesn't get mad that I said that. He said something at one of our meetings, because I got a file that's about this thick on EMS. I think I can spell E&M right now of EMS. I am not confident enough to say I can still spell EMS. You have one complicated industry. Big time. But in one of those meetings, as we were doing our due diligence, talking to the state, talking to the county, and I appreciate, Charlie, when you said thousands of hours that West Webster has spent doing this. I bet you did. Because I feel like, John, you and I have spent hundreds of hours ourselves on trying to get educated, to make factual decisions. And Jeremy Cushman said something that I wrote down. I take kind of copious notes. It helps me remember stuff and whatever. And he said, the town of Webster and the town board does not know what they had with that CON. And I wrote it and I was like, what does he mean by that? But as the meetings went on over the months, I knew exactly what he meant by it. And it was like a V8 moment to me one day. Look, the town's CON is powerful. The town of Penfield and Tony LaFountain and their board, they do not have one. Is that correct, Glenn and Dan?
No, we have a CON for the
Thank
town, for the town of Penfield. The
Your
town itself
agency,
did not.
your private agency has that CON. I wasn't here when the town leadership decided to pursue a town-owned CON. So I just showed up and we had it. I didn't know what it meant. It's a pretty powerful thing, isn't it? In the hierarchy of CONs, it's up there. And that's why West Webster Fire was so interested in making sure, because they know their CON actually can be trumped by decisions that we make as a town for our whole town. Charlie mentioned contract. They went through all this work. They've got a contract now with Penfield Ambulance. Now to me, having been in business a long time, a contract by definition connotates that if I have a contract with Dolly that says, Dolly, you have promised to give me 2 of these pads every month for the next 3 years. And I, in turn, will give you something else. That's a contract, right? Now, if Dolly doesn't deliver those pads, I have recourse in that contract. The West Webster Fire District, and they probably are not happy with me right now, but I've made a lot of people not happy lately. Haven't I, WEMS and Equal Board? I'm an equal opportunity pissing people off. I don't know why this is. Throughout this, they have made it such that there is a contract where it intimates that if Penfield Volunteer Ambulance has said they will have an ambulance in a bay all the time at Gravel, they will stage sporting events of this many people, they will do this, they will do that. Now if Penfield, and I don't believe they would do this because these are good guys, this is a solid organization. However, if Dan and Glenn and Penfield Volunteer Ambulance suddenly change their organization structure in 6 months, they don't do any of the things that they promise in their RFP and in their contract. West Webster Fire Department, Fire District has no control, no leverage on that. Once they transfer their CON, it's gone. That's a fact, and that has been corroborated by several people to me, several high-ranking people in the state and county. So I really don't know why West Webster leadership thinks they have control. It might be one of those things where there's an interim period that they have control, and maybe they don't understand that once it's gone, it's gone. See, I like it this way when it comes to protecting our citizens. I like the fact that our CON has control. That if the town board that's configured of these people today, but someday will be configured of different people, we just caretake this. But I like that contractual structure. That if we get into a contract to cover the town of Webster with an EMS agency, and they don't make good on one or more of those things, we have recourse. Is that correct, Counselor? Yes. Thank you. So that was very important to me as I, conveyed to the board. And last but not least, the last 2 weeks, I can't say enough about Dan and Glenn. You guys have been nothing but gracious from Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. We met a couple weeks ago. It was supposed to be an hour meeting. I think it was 3 hours. Man, I walked out of there. I was so jonesing from drinking too much coffee, whatever. But you guys struck me day one as sincere. Your facility was fantastic. Your organization is top notch. Every question I asked of you subsequent, every document I asked of you subsequent, you were nothing but professionals in the timing of getting that information to me to help this board discern decisions. And I think we said from day one, Penfield Volunteer Ambulance, whether they are awarded from West Webster for that district of West Webster, including west of Hard Road and North Penfield, or if the town board executes their CON, we're going to have a relationship with Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. Just like Tony LaFountain is very interested in your business, Ahmed, or not your business, but the WEMS Nequal's business. Because Tony LaFountain and the Penfield board knows a lot of their citizens are going to have calls handled by WEMS Nequals. Just like I understand that a lot of Webster citizens are going to have calls in 2022 handled by Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. Sure, we would want to know what we have there. And you want to know something? And I didn't call Dan and Glenn today. So I'm almost a little nervous about saying this because I called Tony and said, I'm going to say a couple of things and I don't want you to be mad at me later. And even if Tony was mad, he's going to retire in 6 weeks, so whatever. But the one thing that I really appreciated about Dan and Glenn the first time I met them is I said, I don't want to be disingenuous to you guys. I don't want to sit here and BS you to say that we're going through some discernment process and whatever. As I said, more often than not, based on the facts I have on the table, we're gonna trump that CON, and Nequal's WEMS is gonna get all of Webster. And unless Glenn and Dan are phenomenal Shakespearean thespians, their reaction was almost like a relief, and they followed it up with a business statement that made complete sense to me. Tom, they said, and I'm paraphrasing, that almost is a relief to us because it would have been a larger lift to pick up X thousand calls from getting all of West Webster Fire District and the ambulances and whatever that we would have to do, where if we only are picking up the North Penfield and then the secondary in Webster, it's less than X calls and we only have to upgrade whatever by less than X machines. It's an easier transition. Sharp business guys. The stupidest business in the world is one that goes out like a dog eating more than they should, and then ends up dying because they eat too much. You guys are sharp business guys. That I noticed day one, because that to me was a comment by somebody that knows how to run an organization and isn't just like, gimme, 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 gimme. And I really appreciated that. I appreciate that the WEMS Nequals board met with me 2 times. One of the meetings was not one of my glowing things that I've ever had, and I apologize to them, and I hope that they can see to it to accept my apology. But the one thing that I wanted to make sure, and it's been a tough couple of weeks, as far as I'm concerned, because I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to get the facts and counsel this board on what we should do. I'm not going to sit here and endorse that we do something for 2022 because of emotion and feelings and all that stuff. That's not leadership. That's not good decision making. I can only imagine that I had Nequals and WEMS very nervous, the board, through our meetings. And let's just call it what it is. You were just like, come on, just give us the whole district. And I said, or give us the whole town. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. We're going to do our due diligence. We're going to check things. And with that being said, I'm going to roll into reading this resolution, Bill. How about that? And I want everybody to hear the words, because if the WEMS Nequals board had some anxiety and concerns, as they hear these words, they might still have some anxiety and concerns. I want to make sure I'm ready for it. Okay. It's in here, Dolly, I know it. So this is a resolution, a motion of the Webster Town Board designating Webster Emergency Medical Service as the provider of EMS services for the town of Webster. At a regular meeting of the Webster Town Board of the Town of Webster, Monroe County, New York, held at the Town Board Meeting Room on November 18, 2021, all town board members were present. The following resolution was offered by Supervisor Flaherty. Whereas the Town of Webster, acting by and through duly authorized board members, desires to reaffirm its commitment to a town-wide emergency medical service and general ambulance service for the purpose of providing pre-hospital emergency medical treatment and to provide for the transport of sick or injured persons found within the borders of the town to a hospital or other appropriate place for treatment. And whereas to accomplish that goal, the town board developed a quality and necessary service for the town residents by contracting with appropriate organizations and entities to provide trained staff, experience, and equipment for the provision of a municipal ambulance service. And whereas the town board, as authorized by General Municipal Law 122-B, subchapter 1, and pursuant to Public Health L 3008, chapter 7A, resolved that it is in the best interest of the residents living within the geographic boundaries of the town to establish a municipal ambulance service and thereafter form the Webster Emergency Medical Service, known as WEMS, operated by and contracted with the Northeast Quadrant Advanced Life Support and Nequals to accomplish this goal. And whereas on August 24th, 2016, the town of Webster established an ambulance operation authority as described above. And whereas the town board, as authorized by General Municipal Law 122-B, subchapter 1, and pursuant to Public Health L 3008, subchapter 7A, passed resolution number 132, dated April 19, 2018, which directed and approved that the town to apply for a certificate of need, CON, consistent with Public Health Law 3008-7B, to continue the municipal ambulance service, WEMS, after the expiration of a 2-year period. And whereas the town has received data and information from the public hearings and interested persons related to the need for a municipal ambulance service and made determinations and findings related to applying for its own CON, And whereas prior to the expiration of the town's WEMS operating authority for its ambulance service, the town submitted its application pursuant to the April 2018 authorizing resolution for a permanent CON to the Monroe-Livingston Regional EMS Council, REMS, with all appropriate forms and documents for recertification. And whereas on July 30th, 2018, the REMSCO voted to deny the town's application for a permanent CON, granting operating authority for the town ambulance service. And whereas on August 21st, 2018, the town submitted its official notice of appeal of the REMSCO decision denying the town's request for a permanent CON. And whereas the town was successful in the administrative appeal filed by SEMSCO as to the town's ability to continue to operate an ambulance service, and whereas based on the decision, the town, through its operation of WEMS, received its updated ambulance service certificate from the New York State Department of Health, a copy of which will be annexed as Exhibit A, on August 7, 2020, with an expiration date of August 11, 2022. Whereas the West Webster Fire District has had for approximately 12 years a basic life support services agreement with NEQUALS to provide personnel, emergency medical technicians, to cover the West Webster Fire District service area. And whereas notwithstanding the long-term service agreement between West Webster Fire District and NEQUALS, the contracted operator for WEMS, recently West Webster Fire decided to issue an RFP for EMS services. And whereas after a meeting of the West Webster Fire District Commissioners, it was decided to move forward with selecting an EMS provider for the West Webster Fire District. And whereas the town has enjoyed an EMS service equilibrium for many years, and it has increased service to town residents through the creation of WEMS, and whereas the West Webster Fire District formally announced on October 27, 2021, that it was exiting the BLS, Basic Life Support business, and awarding, transferring their certificate of need to Penfield Volunteer Emergency Ambulance, thus creating a situation where the town of Webster EMS services would be split east and west of Hard Road, with Penfield Volunteer Ambulance as the primary provider of EMS west of Hard Road, and WEMS NEQUALS as the primary provider east of Hard Road. And whereas the town has enjoyed an EMS service equilibrium for many years, and it has increased service to town residents through the creation of WEMS east of Hard Road, and the citizens of the town west of Hard Road have voiced concern as to why WEMS will not be their main provider as of January 1st, 2022, based on this West Webster Fire District decision. And whereas Penfield Volunteer Ambulance and WEMS NEQUALS have worked harmoniously as the primary EMS providers in their respective towns, Penfield Volunteer Ambulance in Penfield and WEMS NEQUALS in Webster, in the Northeast Joint Fire District for several years, with each serving as a mutual aid provider in each respective town. Now therefore, be it resolved as follows. Resolved that the town hereby declares its intent to exercise all lawful authority under its municipal ambulance operating certificate, that is affixed here as Exhibit A, to designate WEMS as the lead agency provider for 9/11 service calls related to the town of Webster as of January 1st, 2022. And resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor, with the assistance of the town attorney, to draft any necessary amendments or amendments to the existing contract between the town of Webster and NEQUAL WEMS by no later than December 15, 2021. And resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town attorney, with necessary assistance from WEMS provider Northeast Quadrant Life Support NEQUALS and its legal counsel, to proceed as necessary and in conjunction with negotiations of the amended contract to accomplish the directions and actions to implement these resolutions. Be it further resolved that the town board hereby acknowledges and reaffirms its support for for the continuation of the town's municipal ambulance service operated as WEMS pursuant to the aforementioned contract and any subsequent amended terms therein. That is my motion.
I gladly second that motion.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye?
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Abbott,
Aye.
Councilwoman Catali.
Aye.
Okay. Bill, that has to be a record for me prior to a resolution,
I
right?
need some water?
I got it right here. I got it right here. So,
Some water just.
I hope, and that resolution will be available for everybody. I hope everybody heard the words of that. Between now and December 15th, I assume that the WEMS Nequal's leadership, management, and their legal counsel will be working with Town Attorney Charlie Genesi and myself, and possibly with John Cahill also. You weren't in the resolution, sorry. Because
I'll be,
I can't stress this enough, and I tried to say it when I first met with the WEMS Nequal board back last Wednesday, the 10th of November. The town has the CON. We need to make sure that we are executing that CON in the best form for the citizens. And so I want to make sure that certain things that I have seen and uncovered, that's a bad term, uncovered, doing the due diligence, getting documents, getting questions answered, there will be discussions on how we can make sure that going into January, that we have a contract that is good for the citizens of Webster. That is going to be the guiding light, guidepost. Not what's good for WEMS and Nequals. Not what's good for the egos of John, Charlie, and me. What is good for the citizens of Webster?
that being said, I would like to personally thank West Webster for meeting with Tom and I. I learned a great deal, not only West Webster Fire Department, but EMS in addition. Ned and your team, thank you a great deal for the service that you've provided to Webster residents over the years. And when I was mayor, Ned, you took it upon yourself to meet with me, to teach me EMS and what you do to cover Webster, the service that you provide. And Dan and Glenn, thank you also, because you also service our residents, both WEMS and Penfield. We're very fortunate to have services our community. Thank you very much.
Anything else? All right, kind of anticlimactic, I think, but there might be some people in the room for this one. Next one up, we have completed what I consider to be the town board assessing the cons and the pros. We've had presentations at a couple of workshops by the American Lung Association, by Webster Health Network, and also by a company, I think, earlier this week that is in the manufacturing business, I guess, of hemp. Thank you very much. So, the next step in this process is that I'm making a motion to set a public hearing on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, to consider a proposed local law to either opt in or opt out of that portion of the New York State Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act regarding the licensure and establishment of retail dispensary and/or on-site consumption license under the provisions of Article 4 of that act within the town of Webster. This public hearing will be advertised in the Wednesday, November 24th Webster Herald edition. My motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilwoman Catali,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Pat, this you? Or is this Mary? Or is this Paul? Or is it all of you?
They're a team down there.
feasibility study, conceptual plan, and geotechnical investigation with a report prepared for a new highway facility at their existing location and the additional 8 acres acquired to the north. We sent that RFP out to 9 different local consulting firms, and we also advertised it in the local paper, and we received 4 proposals. And in our review, we feel that MRB is the best equipped to do this study. I can go over the letter I gave to the board. They understood the project, and the proposed approach that they gave us was the most appropriate for the project. They were very balanced in how they wanted to incorporate what our needs were, as well as having the expertise to advise us. They have successfully designed numerous upstate New York highway facilities on time and on budget. It was impressive to see how close they were on their engineers' estimates to what the project actually came in at. And they also allocated the hours in their fee proposal appropriately, so it didn't look like they were going to give us less or more than what we wanted. So we feel that MRB was the best fit for this deliverable. And I also want to add that we are doing the geotechnical study. That's our proposal, is to do that now. We know that there's a lot of bedrock, shallow, out at the highway facility, so we want to make sure that we incorporate that in the budget when we go to the design phase.
Thank you, Mary and Pat.
Very happy to
Thank
hear that.
Patty also, I don't want to leave.
Sorry.
So Patty, Mary, myself, and Patty were the 3 people that actually evaluated the 4 proposals that came in. So I do want to thank Patty for taking the time to review those with us and go through the process. It was useful to have a board member involved. She's also a liaison to the highway department, so it was great to have another set of eyes on this. I'll sort of summarize what Mary said a little bit from my perspective. This is the first step in heading toward the new highway facility for the highway department. That is greatly needed. The facility there has been there for a great number of years and provided very long term of service, but it is no longer adequate to house the equipment and personnel that the town needs to continue to provide the high level of service that we do. This study here will get us to a point where we can better understand the site that we're dealing with, so that we can have accurate cost estimating and accurate design plans created in the coming months, hopefully, and have all of that stuff be very accurate. It will provide 3 different concept plans, actual layouts on the site that will show where the potential buildings can go, as well as incorporating the buildings we want to leave and the type of common space and storage facilities that we need. So that's sort of more of an overview of we got into a lot of specifics on it, but this particular agency was clearly had done a lot of work on the exact type of facility that we wanted to do versus just municipal facilities.
And I want to thank both of you for allowing me to participate in that process. It was certainly a good learning experience for me. And one of the things that we did talk about, because some of the firms did not include the geotech service up front, was that because we are looking to hopefully locate this on the new parcel we've just purchased, and in a perfect world we'll be able to continue business in the existing structure while the new one is being built, we didn't want to find any surprises on that 8 acres that could potentially derail that plan.
Yeah. So those geotechnical services that are included in this are the ones we actually referenced earlier in the other project.
Good.
Yeah, I would wait and hear what Barry had to say, since this is kind of his.
Thrilled,
Yeah.
thrilled.
I'm sure he will be watching.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I've got other plans for him.
No, no, stop.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
read
please
this.
do.
They're not operating
Okay.
drone.
I would move to award and allow the supervisor to sign a contract for consultant services from MRB Group for the highway facility feasibility study and conceptual design proposal and geotechnical investigation and report not to exceed $47,000.
Second.
Councilwoman Cowley?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye, and I want to apologize, number 8 is make a motion that we table number 8, the resolution on the Cold War veterans
Second.
exemption.
Do we plan on
Second.
seeing?
You want me to explain why first, or you want to get through with the resolution?
Sure, let's go with the resolution.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I make a motion that we table a resolution to set a public hearing to adopt a Cold War veterans exemption.
I second that.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cosby?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
I guess the best explanation is, and you gotta love her, Donna Comer, our assessor, is probably one of the best assessors in the state. And
Sure.
she is really sharp, and this afternoon, there was just a little bit of verbiage and this and that she wasn't quite certain of, and because the board is, I think, emboldened in getting this exemption for the Cold War veterans, but whether we do it this week, next week, or 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, it will not be reflective on the January 2021 tax bill. Okay, did I say 21? The January 22 tax bill, which comes out in about 45 days, correct? It will not be reflective on that. The earliest it will be on is January 2023. And that doesn't mean the town board wants to kick this can down the road until next November. We want to get it done, I think, but Donna said that she will have those details tied up and we can redo it on the 2nd.
Thank you.
Number 11, that has been withdrawn for now. I don't think we have to make a motion to withdraw. And anybody who watches our town board meetings, including our workshops, on Monday night, I think, when we had Enterprise in for the second time, we still have a little bit of measuring to do before we cut, so to speak. I'm excited about what they got there, but we need a little bit more
Paul's
analysis.
got some analysis to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah, let's be sure about it before we get too far.
Yeah.
Take our time.
So that leaves us with our last formal item of the evening. And on Monday at the workshop, we went over the results of this year, 2021, on the Webster Today, the periodical that went out 4 times this year. That is the successor to the Town Times. And based on that, before I make this motion, does any of the board members have any questions, comments about this?
Nope.
No, everybody discussed.
Yeah, so I would like, I can't make this one good. So Barb, I just got thought, bad form.
We authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Pilato Entertainment for the 2022 production of Webster Today, not to exceed $43,000, including postage.
I'll second it.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cosby?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And Paul, just to corroborate, the town budget for 2022 for the Webster Today postage, all in is $43,000.
43,000.
I love when things tick and time. Now, we will open the phones for 5 minutes, kind of go around, and I'm going to need your help. Yes? Yes. Do you, when you look at, where do I got it, did you see, the papers are all over the place. This, see the attendees? Good? Am I missing something? Yeah, but then, there's something on there, right. Yes. Oh, yo. Barry, what are you down to? Are you down to the 2nd, the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd of December?
16th and the 23rd, I'm going to be here in a second. I'm going to be here as well.
I go on vacation once in a while.
Unless twins are born early, then in that case, I'll be here.
So, he's gonna be on vacation the rest of his life.
Yeah, right.
First time.
I may just sit too long, didn't I, Bill?
Yep.
Is that all you guys?
That's all I got. He's out of water.
I'm sure that everybody is not watching anymore. Pat?
Hmm?
'Cause, oh, yeah, I wanted to make sure, Art's not here, but any words or?
How's leaf pickup?
How's leaf pickup going?
How's leaf pickup going? Of course. It's going very well. It's been a unique year. The leaves are not coming down. Did not come down as early as they wanted to, which pushes us back later in the season, which is always a concern because the winter weather starts to come in. We are starting to see some of that weather come in next week. So we are preparing to at least schedule some of the final passes. As indicated online, we will continue to go around as long as the weather allows. However, once we see the weather coming in, we do schedule a last pickup to make sure nobody's confused about waiting until any longer than they have to bring the leaves out. So we really encourage everyone in the town to get them out there so that we can come and pick them up. We've had crews running basically daylight to dark, overtime all week, and Saturdays and Sundays the last 2 weeks to try to catch up with the late drop of the leaves. Try to make sure we get as many as we can, but there is limits. Once the snow starts coming down, our priority is to keep the roads open and clear. So there's only so much we can do. So get them out there this week, next week, most likely the first week in December, which starts with the 29th right after Thanksgiving. We will begin our final passes to go through. We really hope to be able to continue after that, but there's no guarantees after that time. So leaf pickup is going well, but we're starting to close in on that time where we might have our priorities shook up and we can no longer come around and get everything. So.
Aaron?
I will say that Birch Crest has started mobilizing around town, so the last couple of weeks they've been working on the ash trees in the parks, and then they're gonna start, in the park district, so they're coordinating with our parks department and keeping me in the loop as to the progress, so. They're out and about, if you can see them in their backyards, that's why.
Everything's good in the finance department. Getting toward our busy time of year. We're always busy, but toward the end of December and early in the first quarter of each year, we're especially busy. So the numbers just keep coming.
Sure.
Can't stop.
John?
All set, man.
Eddie?
I think we should wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah, we closed on another 18.11 acres of open space last week.
That's
So
awesome.
that's on the order.
Yeah. I know the Friends of Webster Trails are very happy about that. That's great. Dolly?
Well, the town clerk's office has wrapped up the school tax collection, and now we are gearing up for the January town meeting.
Sure. Charlie, can you help me with this? Because I would like to make a motion.
I'll be glad to word it for you. I believe that the board wants to go into executive session pursuant to the Public Officers Law, Section 105, Subdivision 1, Subdivisions D and F, D to discuss proposed possible litigation, a matter that we've already discussed. Discussing with you. The other is a matter involving financial and employment history of a person and groups of persons in town. That's under 1F.
That is my motion.
And who's going to be invited to the executive session?
Well, because there's two components, at the town board, Attorney Genesi, Finance Director Adams, Police Chief Holmeyer, Webster Police Chief Holmeyer, and Webster Special Police Chief Mike Charlie. For the first component. Second component is Attorney Genesi, Finance Director Adams, Town Engineer Harrington, Highway Superintendent, Pat Stevens. Pat, Mary, I hope we don't have to keep you out there too long. Why don't we finish up the first one? All right. So that's my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Montalvo?
Aye.
That is 8:50. That is going to conclude our open end of the meeting tonight. Thank you for everybody that came.
Charlie, can I thank you?